The first of the conditionals that we'll talk about is the if conditional. And we'll start by making a copy of the conditionals.pl file, and we'll call it if.pl so that we can experiment without overwriting the exercise file. And I was just going to show you how if works. You've seen it before, but we're going to talk in detail about it here. So we're just going to say if 1 and message, this is true. And so what this does, this is if is a keyword in Perl, and its purpose is to select code for conditional evaluation. And the argument to if always goes in parentheses. And if the argument evaluates to true, then the code inside the block will evaluate. And in this case, it is message, this is true. Since message is the only statement in the block, the semicolon is optional, but I like to put it there when I remember to. Sometimes I do forget. And if we save this and run it, we'll see that the message displays. If I put a 0 here instead of a 1 and save it and run it, we'll see that the message does not display. So we know that 0 is false and 1 is true. In actuality, anything besides a 0 or an empty string or undef is considered true. So if I put in here 142 and save that and run it, we'll see that this is true. If I put in here a string and say this is a string and save it and run it, it's still considered true. If I put in an empty string, that is a string with nothing in it, and save that and run it, we do not get the message because that is considered false. Or if I put in the special undef value, that is also considered false. And run that. Any expression at all can go here. It can be the result of a function call. It can be any expression. It could be a mathematical expression, 5 plus 5, and that'll evaluate to true. If I say 5 minus 5, of course, that will evaluate to false. And so it can be anything that resolves to a value, and any value that is 0 or an empty string or the undef value will be false. Anything else whatsoever will be considered true. And so that is how if works. I just want to cover one other thing that I find useful. This is certainly not required, and most Perl programmers do not bother to do this, but I find it useful, is to use the constant module to define constants for true and false. These can be useful for return values or for anything where you want to just have something that not only evaluates to true or false, but actually looks like true and false to the person reading the code. So I'm going to say use constant. And this allows you to define constants in Perl. Constants are special values that cannot be modified and will always be guaranteed to be what you define them to be. So I'm going to make one for true and make one for false. And the format of the constants here is just like a hash. And so you can define however many things you want to here. And then if I put true in this, the syntax is just like that. It doesn't need quotes or anything like that. I need a semicolon here. And then we can save and run. And we'll see that that evaluates, of course, to true. And I can put false in here and save that and run it. And that will evaluate to false. Using the constants, I find it useful. I'll use them for return values from functions and things like that, where I want something to actually say true and say false. Perl is lacking keywords for this. Many languages have them, many languages don't. In languages that don't, I'll tend to define constants or macros or whatever facility that language has. I like to have the word true and the word false in some circumstances, and so this is a convenient way to get that. So again, this is the if statement, this is the if conditional, and it selectively evaluates code based on a condition that can evaluate to true or false. 0 the empty string and the undef value are considered false. Anything else is considered true.